Starbucks has a new CEO and it makes us all wonder what the future holds for the largest coffee chain in the world. Under Howard Schultz's vision of making Starbucks everyone's third place, the company thrived for many years. However, that success has diminished recently, with shares declining nearly 20% this year until the announcement of Brian Niccol's hire on August 13th, which caused the stock to surge by 25%. It was the biggest single-day percentage increase since Starbucks stock made its market debut in 1992. But can the company sustain this surge in stock price? Is Brian Niccol the right person to lead Starbucks into its next chapter? And what needs to be done for the company to go back to its growth trajectory? Let's find out. Here's Paula Macaggi, and this is episode 34 of my show. Welcome to OFFBounds. In Howard Schultz's book, Pour Your Heart Into It, published in 1997, he talks a lot about the fundamentals that made Starbucks so successful. He wrote that people connect with the Starbucks because they relate to what they stand for, which was more than just coffee. It is the romantic coffee experience, the warmth and community feeling people get in their shops, and how the tone is set by the barista who custom makes each espresso drinks and explain the origins of different coffees. They also have focused on employee happiness by providing healthcare programs even for part-time workers and stock options that provide ownership to everyone. DeAnn Campbell, a retail consultant and fellow top retail expert, is joining us today. She not only has been studying and writing about the company, but she's also a customer.
I think it started back in the early 80s. Howard Schultz was new to the company. He visited Italy, but while he was there, he admired the culture of people sitting in coffee shops, savoring a beverage and a pastry, chatting with their friends, or watching the world go by. That experience didn't really exist in the US at the time, and he wanted to recreate it here. He saw an unmet need for something that he called the third place, a place that is distinct from home and work where you can spend some time. And this third place concept resonated overwhelmingly with Americans. They just loved that idea. I think it touched on a collective nerve in our psyche that we didn't know we were missing. And it gave Starbucks almost 3 decades of unprecedented growth in the industry. And at the same time, to complement this third place concept, Starbucks offered high quality beverages at what at the time was fairly reasonable price point. A real barista made your drink. The stores were beautiful, they were well designed, they had couches and comfortable chairs. You were encouraged to linger. And this is something that in the 80s and 90s was really not commonly done, so it was new. And then the third thing they did, just to seal the deal, was to make sure that their products and their experience were consistent from location to location. So no matter which Starbucks you went to, your drink tasted the same. You had that same kind of uplifting, happy cafe atmosphere. It's really that trinity of experience, quality, and consistency that formed the bedrock of success for Starbucks. And it allowed them to launch a massive period of growth.
Another consultant and fellow retail expert, Rael, will help us understand more about Starbucks. Brandon and I often have discussions about several topics on WhatsApp, and this one specific topic has been a lot of food for thought these last days.
I think the original promise from Schultz was really a premium destination, somewhere where you can enjoy premium coffee, you can be in a comfortable environment, and the value statement was really centered around providing the finest coffee and really maintaining their principles. And then it kind of evolved that with every conversation, every community, they nurture limitless possibilities in the human connection. So all these value statements were there, and I think those who remember what Starbucks used to be actually appreciated having that kind of experience, especially in the US, where it was lots of other chains and lots of other experiences that were subpar. But it was good to have quality coffee in a warm, welcoming environment with a really strong identity, and then it really became very popular very quickly.
And it's funny enough that my first time at Starbucks was in 2012 when I traveled to the US for the first time. And I've never had that warm experience in their store. I did like the cashier writing my name and the barista calling it, but I can't remember if I ever felt good sitting in one of their stores to have a relaxed conversation or enjoying a beverage. Maybe it was just because New York is New York, or maybe they changed.
It's funny, the revenue started to plateau in 2015, and it really wasn't because of lack of customers. That's what I found kind of interesting. It was more because they were the victim of their own success. They had expanded so rapidly and opened so many locations that they kind of cannibalized the market. It was hard to find new locations that were affordable, that weren't stealing traffic from another Starbucks, and it started to become a joke. There's a Starbucks on every corner, every 2 blocks. You can't throw a rock without hitting a Starbucks.
I think it actually grew significantly. So the company achieved record profitability and expanded so much. But I would argue even back in the mid 2000s already, the decline began because it self-commoditized. It came to the point where the intimacy was gone and it became the same basic experience in every Starbucks. And if you think about how much they've scaled, that they expect to open 45,000 stores globally by 2025, and the track record, they're expected to grow by 55,000 by 2030. So how do you actually have that experience, that intimacy, and that sense of community in every individual Starbucks?
Self-commoditizing means everything that made the brand special, the comfortable chairs, the freshly grounded coffee beans, the barista treating you personally by calling you by your name, have now disappeared. They are now more focused on efficiency, so instead of writing your name, it is a printed piece of paper. Many of their shops don't even have chairs to sit on anymore, and they now have ready-to-use sealed packages of coffee for their baristas. And there's a mobile order too. Today, customers have 170,000 different ways to order a drink on Starbucks. And it even became a TikTok trend to make it as crazy as possible. But even for normal drinks, each Starbucks store is full of people waiting for their orders, ruining the flow of the in-store experience.
It's also hurting the employees because now they're really just being turned into assembly line workers. If you watch employees in any Starbucks, they've got their heads down, they're not smiling, they're just cranking out to-go orders as quickly as they possibly can. And there's no camaraderie, there's very little engagement with the customer. And that banter between employees, the atmosphere of joy and energy that used to be part of the coffee shop experience just isn't going to be found in a Starbucks anymore. That makes them more like any other QSR.
Also, Starbucks beverage prices are up and consumers are being very cautious with their spending, which makes it all a huge snowball effect. If what made the company special was the value through the experience that it creates, and you don't offer that anymore, the perceived value your customers will have towards your product won't be compatible with the high prices you are charging. In Howard's book, he says that it is possible to provide long-term shareholder value and keep the brand identity and treat employees fairly. But that isn't really what we have been seeing. Under Laxman Narasimhan's leadership, Starbucks saw 3 consecutive quarters of disappointing results, including declining same-store sales and earnings in its 2 most recent quarters. The news that Laxman has been ousted after just 18 months as CEO raises questions. Did he have enough time to make a difference? And did Howard's continued presence give him the freedom to do so?
I think that was the initial strategy, initial intent. I think Howard was a presence all the time. He was always there. He actually fired off a pretty loud statement on LinkedIn about returning to the core values. He didn't specifically call out Laxman's name, but he talked about leadership, lack of alignment with their core values, and they need to return to what they were before. So it really diminished the confidence in Laxman. It was inevitable, unfortunately. I think he was, doomed to fail just because of Howard's presence in the business, and rightfully so. And Howard's been there from the start and helped to found the company and make it what it turned out to be, the powerhouse.
I think of Laxman as that rebound CEO you hire when you finally decide you're going to break up for good this time and you don't want to go back to the relationship, so you quickly start dating someone new to help you move on. I think Howard really intended to, and he probably believes that he gave Laxman the room he needed to step into the role. But Howard feels ownership for Starbucks, and that is a huge strength, but it's also a hindrance. The company is his baby, his child, and he's raised it through elementary school and high school and got it through college. I think he's very good at starting a company, at identifying unmet needs, at helping a company create a growth strategy, but he has not proven to be as effective as a maintenance man. When a company is very mature and it's now out of college and it's become a full-grown adult and it's independent from parenting, I think that's a very hard thing for Howard to do. I also think the industry as a whole is working against the CEO. Laxman had the skills to do the job well. He worked for Pepsi. He was not without street cred, but he just didn't have time to do the things he needed to do. I think of the top companies in the US today, if you look at the ones who've left their companies in the past 12 months, more than half were forced out. CEOs used to have about 18 to 24 months to make a positive impact. Today, I think that's closer to 12 months. If you don't have a win right out of the starting gate, you're really going to struggle as CEO in getting the support and the room to maneuver that you need to do the job.
Starbucks then decided to bring an interesting character to lead the company, the one responsible for the turnaround of Chipotle after the food safety crisis in 2016, and that made the stocks rise almost 800%. He is Brian Niccol, an accomplished leader who made many shareholders happy throughout his career in fast food, but now with a much larger challenge. While Chipotle is located mostly in the US and has more than 3,500 restaurants and 116,000 employees, Starbucks has nearly 40,000 cafes with 400,000 employees and operates in dozens of countries, including China. He is being well paid for it though. Starbucks has awarded its new chief executive, Brian Niccol, cash and stock potentially worth more than $100 million, making him one of US's highest paid chief executives. While there are people who are bullish about this change, some people think that this fast food experience that he has might focus too much on efficiency and less on what Starbucks really needs. Focus on the customer.
I think it all depends what the Starbucks aspirations and goals are. And if the goals are for Starbucks and Brian Niccol, drive operational efficiencies, to continue digital first strategy, to reduce operating costs, to accelerate store expansions, then I believe Niccol is the right leader to turn around the business and return to profitability. He does have a consistent track record and driving operational efficiencies for fast food operations. Talked about digital acceleration at Chipotle and Taco Bell. So certainly that track record is there. I think this will definitely please Starbucks executives and the board and major shareholders, and it will maximize shareholder value as the business starts to turn around. And there are strategic initiatives in place, but if you think about it, it's going to continue to be a departure from the original goals and aspirations of Howard Schultz and the vision for Starbucks being the third place, a place to connect with the community and provide outstanding experiences and quality products and coffee. So it's possible to turn the business around. He's the right person for the job, but again, there's the downside as well.
They have to get back some of that third place experience. That is essential. But I'm not sure they're going to be allowed to do that because it's a publicly traded company. Stock value is very important. And the interests of generating revenue and holding on to that stock price, there's probably going to be a lot of pressure on Brian to automate more and more and more. But the bigger problem is that very automation and their business model around allowing franchisees and having all of that customization, those things undermine the quality of the product.
When his new role was announced, the internet was flooded with memes warning people to watch out for their order sizes, as Chipotle has been the target of customer complaints about shrinking portions.
First, I can tell you the portions have not gotten smaller. One of the things I think it's great about Chipotle is if you come into the restaurant and you want a little more rice or you want a little more pico, all you got to do is kind of like, and usually our guys and women, give them a little more scoop.
But what would you do if you were the Starbucks CEO today? I asked Brandon, and he has a lot of practical ideas.
I'm going to role play pretend I'm Brian Niccol. I'm the new CEO, and I have full autonomy and support from the board. I already know that Starbucks is a global iconic brand. It has a solid foundation, and to hear my transformation recommendation to get out of the commoditization patterns. All right. It may be a departure from what Brian Niccol will do, but this is what I would do if I was Brian. All right, 1, separate the customer journeys to enhancing cafe experience. Get the mobile customers, the mobile orders in a separate part of the cafes, a designated area away from the main cafe. The second part of that is ensure there's enough staff to support the volume for both. So if people want to stay in the cafe, they have the same experience they used to have. Mobile orders are still able to be converted. So that's that aspect. 2, I would prioritize the cafe space and transform it. They need to make a significant capital investment to modernize the locations. A lot of the stores have a legacy, like a kind of old school kind of vibe to it from the 90s or early 2000s. It worked well then, but it doesn't really work well now in the modern world. So again, bring in maybe the roastery experience or element to that. Maybe close some stores. There's plenty of non-profitable stores that are not doing well, and rationalize the footprint. And also have the cafe represent the local community, bring in local designs and artists and local foods, and don't offer those frozen food products, but actually work at local bakeries and other stores to bring in premium products. It'd be great as well. That would drive a lot of profitability. The third area of priority is quality. Improve the coffee experience, the espresso experience, organic, sustainably sourced coffee. Kind of rediscover the art of coffee making and sourcing, which I think was there in the beginning and was really cool and exciting for us in the US. Align the price with the quality people expect. So I think that's also important. The perception that we're getting robbed is out there. So again, transform the food offerings. There's a health and wellness, and people are a lot more conscious about their overall wellness. The food is just tired and doesn't really provide the offerings people are looking for. And again, bring in the local producers, no more frozen foods, but look for organic, locally sourced products as well. 4, I would elevate the loyalty program, revisit it, really incentivize customers to come back, engage with the brand, improve the points program, drive more personalization. You have the data, you know your customers so well. How can you retain these customers? How can you actually make it more experience for them and gamify the whole thing? And maybe get involved in the metaverse or Roblox. Starbucks is everywhere, so it's a well-known brand, and leverage social strategies like TikTok and Instagram and the influencer community. But it all comes down to execution at the store, and I think there is a lot of opportunity. My fear and it's going to be a similar commoditization pattern that will continue focusing on operational efficiencies and profitability, which may work well, again, very well for shareholders and the executive board, but it may alienate the customers. So that's my plan.
Maybe there is a to-go chain and there is a coffee shop chain, and those two things have different designs, different layouts, different functions, and different staffing levels and different business models. So that's something that I think Brian should really look into as well, because you can't have one cafe serve 3 disparate needs that cancel each other out a little bit. And then I think he should start looking at ways to bring the craft back into the employee experience a little bit. If you fully automate the line, own it, do it, admit up to it, but there are certain things that I think you still need people for, and that is engagement between the customer and the brand.
So let's hope someone at Starbucks is listening to that, because I agree. And I actually would like to add that the new CEO will have to take a closer look at China. Starbucks was the first coffee chain in China in 1999, and Schultz had identified it as the key to the chain's future growth. He said Starbucks will open a store there every 9 hours over a 3-year span in the country. However, China's 2 leading coffee chains have opened a new outlet every hour on average in recent quarters. Last year alone, Luckin Coffee added as many stores as Starbucks had in its entire history in the country, meaning that Starbucks will also need to focus on regaining market share in China. It won't be an easy job, but Brian Niccol is definitely getting paid enough to commit to the company's success, and he's also given the luxury to work remotely, and he said he refuses to work after 6 p.m. Lucky guy. We will be watching the development of this new cycle at Starbucks, and I truly hope the business recovers its essence. With this episode, we close out August and start gearing up for the return of schools, Shop Talk Fall, Black Friday, the holidays, and of course, NF. We have already many exciting guests secured for interviews in the upcoming months, and I can't wait to share everything with you next week. See you next Tuesday.